Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are architect Brenda Levin and author Taylor Wilshire. Brenda Levin has been an architect for over 25 years. She was born and raised on the East Coast, studied at Carnegie Mellon, graduated with a Bachelor of Arts from NYU, and has a master's from Harvard Graduate School in design. She moved to Los Angeles, and Brenda went to work with legendary architect John Lautner. Then she started her own firm. And why did you start your own firm, and what did you take from John Lautner with you?
Well, you know, working for John Lautner was an amazing experience. Coming from the East Coast, I really wasn't that familiar with his work. But John was larger than life. He had this relationship with Frank Lloyd Wright, which he cherished and spoke of often. And I think what I came away from my experience at John's was an extraordinary visionary, but someone who had an amazing attention to detail. He was a craftsman.
Well, you must have learned your craft very well, because after starting Brenda Levin and Associates, you've gotten national and international awards, you know, just piled them up. And how did you find the work?
In some ways, I fell into it. It's one of these great stories where I actually worked for another firm after Lautner, a small firm named Group Archon. And during my time there, Wayne Ratkovich, a well-known developer in town now, had just purchased the Oviatt building, which is a 1928 Art Deco building in downtown Los Angeles. And he brought that project to the firm, and they assigned it to me. And that's how I met Wayne, and when I started my own firm, I went on to do many projects with him.
So that was a collaboration, more or less?
That was a collaboration on the Oviatt building.
But what was Ratkovich doing?
Well, he was a new developer. He had been from Coldwell Banker and as a broker, and he started his own firm. And it was Ratkovich, Bowers and Perez. And Wayne loved old buildings, and he bought the Oviatt building for $400,000 in 1978.
And it's so beautiful.
And it is beautiful.
And when you went to see it, did you fall in love with it, or did you think it was a wreck?
No, I fell in love with it. I mean, I'm from the East Coast. I'm from New York and Boston. Old buildings are part of my life, and also what I believe are some of the great assets of urban living.
But at the Lautner firm, they weren't doing old buildings, were they?
I was working on Bob Hope's house in Palm Springs.
I remember that. I mean, I remember that's what it was doing, but that was innovative.
It was.
That was contemporary architecture.
Absolutely, absolutely. But again, I think what I took away from John is this craftsman skill that he really empowered in all of his projects.
When you get into a historic building, say like the Oviatt building, what do you start looking for first? How do you research what the building looked like?
Well, you're desperate to find drawings if they exist. They usually don't. Sometimes you're lucky. Griffith Observatory, we had a whole set of drawings.
I'm going to show this drawing just because we're talking about it now. You did the Griffith Observatory. We'll talk about it later. But is this what you were talking about?
Well, this was a sketch that was uncovered by observatory staff by Russell Porter, who was an amateur astronomer and sort of sketched his vision of Griffith Observatory. And you can tell from the sketch the actual project looks very much like it.
I'll show this too, since we're talking about that.
That is the finished version of Griffith Observatory, which we did with Pfeiffer Partners, another architect, and just completed and opened in November after basically 10 years.
After 10 years of renovation. Well, does that happen on every old building? Does it take a long time?
I think architecture in general is a delayed gratification field, we like to say, and that you emerge and become your own when you turn 60, which I did this year. So
Happy birthday.
I think that projects tend to take a long time, whether they're new construction or whether they're renovation.
We'll talk about the Oviatt building, and then I want to talk about the two markets. I thought if we talked with the Oviatt building, there was the Fine Arts building, and the same type.
Right. With Wayne, we did the Fine Arts building, the Oviatt building, Wiltern Theater, and something called Chapman Markets. And then we went on to work with Ira Yellen on the Bradbury building and Grand Central Markets.
But so Oviatt and Fine Arts and look kind of, and Wiltern, were they all kind of from the same period? Did they all look alike?
They're all 20s. Unfortunately, in Los Angeles, our oldest buildings really are from the late 1800s. I mean, the Bradbury building is 1893.
Is that one of the oldest?
That is one of the oldest. Grand Central Market's 1917. The Oviatt, Fine Arts, and Wiltern are all in the 20s, late 20s, early 30s. They're all different styles, though. They're Art Deco, they're Romanesque, they're sort of streamlined, modern. Each one has its own distinctive style.
I have this from the Wiltern. But they all have their own distinctive styles. They were researched the same way. Did each building, with what you found in each building, help with other buildings?
Well, I think we were discovering, in a sense, we were in the late 70s, early 80s, preservation was not as well accepted as it is now. And so we were really inventing some of the techniques to restore these buildings. They weren't sort of standard practice. And the other thing was that the city of Los Angeles didn't have codes for the renovation of existing buildings. And so we were inventing that as well.
Oh, I wondered how that went. You also, City Hall?
City
Should
Hall
I show
with,
that too?
with A.C. Martin. We were, there was a seismic retrofit. This is the tallest building in the United States that's on base isolators, which means the building will roll in the next seismic event. And
was it there before when they built it? You put it in?
No, that was part of the A.C. Martin repair. And we did the restoration of the historic
But that took a long time.
That was also a long time.
I was in the tower.
Yes, well, you were in the most dangerous place.
That was so beautiful, though.
It is
the way
beautiful.
It was restored and walking up the stairs. Are all those things intact when you go in to restore something, or do you have to?
It depends. Sometimes we uncover things that have been covered up over the years, and it's a bit of a surprise. Other times it's there and it's in disrepair. The observatory was sort of loved to death. It had 2 million visitors a year, and for 70 years, not much repair or restoration.
And it held up?
And it held up because the materials were great quality to begin with.
So it's not always a situation of deterioration when you go in to do a building.
Not always. Sometimes it is. The Wiltern was fairly deteriorated because it had been vacant and vandals had lived in it for many years. Griffith was just sort of tired and worn, and every surface needed to be touched. And of course, it needed to be expanded,
I drove by the Chapman Market this morning, and it's so beautiful, and there's so much detail on the outside. Did you have to restore that detail, or did you just bring it to life?
We really mostly cleaned that building and then restored the courtyard. The courtyard,
on the inside.
The Chapman Market was the first drive-in market in Los Angeles, drive-through market. And so we created that courtyard in the middle. I think that was sort of the urban move on that project.
And you also talked about doing Grand Central. Were those the same kind of projects?
Grand Central was interesting. Grand Central has 57 individual owners. Every tenant in that building is an owner. So you had 57 clients on that, in addition to Ira Yellen, who had a very precise vision of the market.
One of the things what I found in the book, this book of yours is so heavy. It's so great.
It's a lot of years.
But was signage. What do you do about signage? I think this showed to me, it was so great to see the old signs. Are they still around?
We recreated signs. There were probably 4 or 5 original black box neon signs that remained in the market. And part of what you do when you're looking at a historic building is try to figure out what's the period of significance. What do you want to take the building back to? What memory do you want to evoke? And in this case, it was really clear we wanted to get rid of all the fluorescent signage and bring back the black box. And we worked with Sussman Prasia, Deborah Valencia on the design of that signage.
But when you say you want to get rid of take away the neon,
No, not the neon. We wanted to bring the neon back. We wanted to get rid of all the plastic signs.
Oh, the plastic,
that had been put in
runway. What do they
years.
call them?
Yeah.
Not runway. What do they call? What kind of?
Well, these were just sort of fluorescent boxes
with
of neon
thing
signs,
sticking
right? And no panache at all.
I see. So.
And I think, because I have an undergraduate degree in graphic design and have worked in that field, I'm pretty sensitive to signage and color and graphics and try to incorporate that in our architecture.
Do you use the same people over and over? Like you talked about Sussman, you talked about the owners or the contractors. Do you use those people?
We try to. I mean, we build relationships. Much of this business is about relationships, and so the engineers that we work with and the consultants we tend to use over and over again, and everybody develops a particular expertise. So those who have worked with us on historic buildings particularly, new construction, probably a broader group of people to work with.
Well, you're the queen of restoration, but maybe that's not what you want to be. Do you want to build your own landmark building?
I think we have.
Have you? Tell me what those are.
We have built some landmark buildings. We've worked with Oakwood School in North Hollywood and have built 2 buildings for them. We're about to redo their master plan. We're actually working with Wilshire Boulevard Temple, and we will restore that landmark, but we will also add to that landmark.
I mean, put your own building with your own
Exactly.
imprimatur on it.
And we just finished a wonderful project in Little Tokyo called the National Center for the Preservation of Democracy, which is a new theater, 200-seat theater, adjacent to a existing Buddhist temple.
So when you do that, is there a footprint for you to follow, or is it a Brenda Levin look?
This is a Levin and Associates look. This is we often work on projects that have new components, new major components to existing historic buildings, and the new components are always contemporary. They are respectful sort of in mass and scale and sensitivity to the existing historic building, but they in no way try to replicate the historic building.
No, I wouldn't think that, but that then, with your past, knowing about the historic building, that your contemporary building has those, things that speak to it?
Right, and I think we're particularly sensitive to context, whether the context is on a college campus. We've done a lot of work at Occidental College and Scripps College, or whether it's the street and the urban character of the street,
and
or
this
whether
is
it's
what
an adjacent building.
You talked about context,
Well,
right? In a
context.
way.
I mean, what is
Here it is right here.
so great about Griffith Observatory is that it's visible from everywhere, and particularly from the basin. And so that was a huge sensitivity. Our context on Griffith was that the building should look exactly the same when you arrive or when you see it from below as it did in 1935.
And you accomplished that.
Thank
that
you.
was great. And before we leave, what kind of house do you live in?
Well, we built our house in 1981, and it's completely contemporary. It's, one of my friends said it's a cross between John Lautner and Mies van der Rohe. And I did design it right after working for John, so it's highly influenced by his architecture.
Thanks, Brenda.
My pleasure, Joan. Thank you.
And don't go away. We'll be right back with author Taylor Wilshire. Read if you have to read. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with author Taylor Wilshire, who was born and raised in New York. Taylor was a vice president of sales and marketing for a Fortune 500 company, and later founded her own marketing firm. She studied theology for 20 years and in 1991 became an ordained minister. You were busy in all these different worlds, not the world of novels. How did that happen?
You know, writing the book was one of those things that was a process. It took a lot of years and a lot of airplane rides, but it all pulled together.
What did you do in your high-powered corporate world?
I was a vice president of sales and marketing. So I was in more of the technology business when I was in corporate America.
So was that hard?
You know, I enjoyed it. I was very passionate about what I did, and I liked all aspects of corporate America. I had a really good experience. I only have good things to say.
Were you young? And you were young.
I was young, definitely younger.
And you were a woman in that big, tough field. Did it help or hinder
being female? You know,
and young.
yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, there's good people everywhere, and I was lucky that I had some good people that supported me and had a lot of fun when I was in corporate America.
When you were part of corporate America, you were also doing motivational speaking, or was that afterwards?
Yeah, I was kind of towards the tail end. We would have like motivational pieces for sales meetings and regional things, and then it kind of spun off into doing some things for like kind of life coaching, self-improvement sorts of things.
Do you train for that? I mean, do you take classes?
Well, I think a lot of the training, believe it or not, kind of was hands-on and doing a lot of public speaking when I was in corporate America, but I did Toastmasters, so that was like a little thing. And when I, studied through school, but it's an intuitive thing, I think, when you speak about things that in front of a large group.
But what does Toastmasters help you do?
Publicly speak.
Is it like a group of people get together?
Yeah.
But
they teach you the mechanics.
Motivationally approaching a group,
yes,
you have to have. I mean, you have to really know what you're talking about, but you also have to inspire them, don't you?
Yeah, I think, but it comes from the whole idea of being passionate. When you come from a passionate place and you feel good in your life, it's kind of like the law of cause and effect. When you put out good and you're feeling good, it's easy to make other people feel good, I think.
And all the while, were you studying theology?
Yeah.
Because it went for so long, right?
Absolutely.
And you spoke to colleges and you spoke around, but was it all part of the theology in the back of mind?
You know, the theology thing and becoming an ordained minister, the ordained minister thing was really about feeling like I could graduate from my spiritual path, because it took a long time, because I was kind of self-discovering myself, and I was interested in different religions, and I was passionate about it, but more importantly wanted to know what happens to, when you die, what happens to get us through life.
Did you find out?
Yeah, I think I have a much more better feeling about it and a peace with it. But as I studied different religions, they kind of started to say the same things after a while. And it felt like different paths to the same source.
That's what I would say. That's what I would think.
Yes.
And so that's why we have to be so tolerant of everyone, because we all do come to the one central figure.
Absolutely. I think we're all the same at the core. We're all...
So all those roads you said just lead, right?
Yeah, to the same source, to the same God, to the same love.
Did the college gigs, did they lead you to have some kind of dating expertise?
Oh. So where did the what if guy come in? Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah, I mean, we have this book, and we know what kind of background you have, and we know that you have to use your background, right, when you start writing.
Where the what if guy came into place was the whole idea of taking spirituality and making it fun. And how do you take, heavy self-help theories or theological theories and methodology, and how do you make it fun? And so I thought, why not make a funny story, write it in a way where people can gravitate with a little romance, and then tell about these ideas.
But here we have this single girl, right?
Yes.
And she's supposed to know everything. She acts like she's writing a guide. I mean, how does she come off knowing so much?
It's. I think when I know for myself, when I was in my 20s, you think you know it all, but it's life and life experiences that kind of teach you along the way. So I think she thinks she knows it, but as you see, because you've read the book, she doesn't really quite know it all, and she's still searching for the answers for herself.
Well, she's looking for a soulmate. What's a soulmate? I mean, a soulmate could be something different to everyone.
Absolutely. Good question. I think a soulmate for me is someone who is a safe harbor, someone who loves you unconditionally, someone who helps you to become a better person. I don't believe in the type of soulmate where it's the person that completes you, because that's never worked for me. But I do believe in the soulmate that makes you a better person. Not always maybe feels good making you a better person, maybe makes you more patient because they drive you crazy, but they do. And I think a soulmate is someone you intuitively know in your heart and someone that stays with you.
Yes, but she kept looking, and she kept thinking everyone was her soulmate. And then, I mean, you know, she didn't know where she was going, but she was giving us a guide and telling us what to do, this Riley McKenna, right? So where did she come from?
The idea of Riley, I think when I was at her space in my own life, I was looking for someone who might have had a shorthand, some, you know, answers to things that I was searching for. Because I was looking for a soulmate in my life. And wouldn't it be nice to have a guide to kind of help you with that, so to speak?
Do you think she had an insight? I mean, we talk about chick lit. What's chick lit?
Chick lit, the genre
like
of
gum, chick lit?
It does. It kind of sounds like that, doesn't it?
No, chick literature.
Lit, yeah, female literature, contemporary, meaning of today, female fiction.
And it's insightful. I mean, Riley McKenna, your
main character,
thinks she knows everything, that she's insightful into what she's doing.
Yeah,
and she does. In a way, she ends up being pretty insightful and finding herself.
But she stumbles across the way, like I think we all do, literally stumbles across the way of her life and trying to find these answers. But yeah, she gets lucky because she's got a best friend who, unlike her, you know, helps her out.
And how did you solve her problems? I mean, one thing you say is you have to forgive and forgive yourself.
Yeah.
What do you mean about in those ways?
I think, you know,
because it's coming out of your mouth,
right?
I think.
Well, I'm definitely not Riley. I get asked that question a lot. You know, the idea of Riley and some of the things that Riley experienced, I experienced, but it's really a fictional story. But how do you get to forgiveness? In the book A Course in Miracles, which is sprinkled throughout the book, The What If Guy, in the book A Course in Miracles, they talk about getting to that place of love from a place from fear, like switching your thoughts from a fearful thought to a loving place. And how you get there is through the power of forgiveness.
And you talk about that book. Her friend gives her that book.
Yes,
and she goes to that book once in a while and, you know, finds something like burning the letters. No, that's your own thing. I love that. Tell us how you get rid of your problems.
You know, the burning process, it's letter burning is like an old ancient thing, something I didn't make up or come up with. But
is that right?
Yeah, it's a self-help tool that's been around for a while, actually.
So what do you do?
So if you're in a place in your life where you feel overwhelmed and it's heavy and arduous and you want to get out of that space, whether it's a death of someone or a breakup of someone, and your mind starts obsessing about that, one way of clearing your mind is just to write everything you possibly can write, everything you can think of, maybe that you would never say out loud or say to a person, and you just get it all out on paper. And then you take it to a safe place, like over a sink, and you burn it. And the whole idea of that, burning that, there's an energy that's released. It's very healing.
Oh, that's interesting, because it does sound like it could help you along the way. Is that part of when you say forgive yourself too? Can you do
absolutely.
that?
I absolutely think that is a tool. But I think the process of forgiving is indeed a process. And it's one of those things that you have to open your heart and be willing to change the way you think, change the way you know, how you feel. And through that willingness, I think something grand opens up. I think the unconditional love can help you to get to that forgiving place, especially when it's something that's hard that you're forgiving.
The good thing, the funny thing I thought is the nicknames you gave people, like your character went out with Mr. Zero. What other names did you use like that? Those were so cute.
You know, it was, thank you. Zero, I think Toad was another nickname, you know, from her last name, Toad Vin. But it was, I tried to craft the book where there are some funny things where you feel like you can laugh out loud and relax and be entertained.
So when you studied theology, did you take that course of Marianne Williams?
Well, actually, A Course in Miracles is written by a Foundation of Inner Peace. It's written by Bill Thetford and Helen Schuchman.
Oh, it's different.
But no, it's the same. It's the same source. It's 1,100 page, 3-volume, written in partly our iambic pentameter, really heavy, wonderful, like almost poetry that Marianne Williamson uses also.
Oh, she uses it as her core?
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's because it's so big and it's an arduous book, because it's written kind of like an iambic pentameter, it's hard to get through a lot of the theory. So I've used it kind of as some of the core ideas of A Course in Miracles.
I see. Do you think this had a happy ending?
Do you think it had a happy ending?
Yeah, she found what she wanted, but I was thinking, she found a nerd. That's not what she was looking for. But it must have been her soulmate.
You know, our soulmates come in different packages. They're not always the beefcake or the Adonis type. And, that's a message that I wanted to put across, that usually what you think is the package of the perfect guy might not be a soulmate. And so that's why I kind of wanted to do something that didn't seem so traditional.
Yeah, that's why you should never prejudge, right?
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Do you find your book being a movie?
There's some talk, actually. It's early in the game, but I would love that. That would be such a neat thing.
Did you think about that when you were writing it?
At one point, I think towards the last edits, I thought this would be kind of cool when we were creating dialogue and whatnot.
And
it would be a dream.
Do you have anyone picked out?
For people? Oh, gosh.
I know, I always love that when you have this list of people that you would love.
If it's meant to be, I think it'll all come together in the right people. Yeah.
Were you thinking of people when you were writing those characters?
Were individual? Not really. There was like a loose sketch of what I thought they would be like, but it was but never a real person, I think. Ideas of certain people, but not really a person to kind of play it. Never thought like that. But I can think about it now.
And how did you physically write it? What did you physically do?
It was a process for me, because writing was something I never wanted to do. It wasn't a natural propensity. Took a lot of writing classes and writing courses, and
you did
a lot of journaling. It took a long time. It took 14 years to be right here talking about it.
Is that right?
Yeah, but in that process I wrote a couple other books. So
did you do it by hand or computer?
I did. I started by hand and then moved to computer.
Because journaling is by hand, right?
There's something kind of neat that happens when you journal, when the pen touches the paper. But I'm impatient, so I really like the idea of a computer, because it moves you forward quite quickly.
What are you writing now?
Well, the second book, we're just starting the edits on the second book, and it's kind of like this book where it's a fictional story but has a self-help kind of spiritual twist. And it's about two 40-year-old women that kind of crash and burn. They're stay-home moms and lose their passion. They lose their breath. And how they get it back again.
Oh, good. We can't wait.
Oh, that's so nice. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Taylor Wilshire. Did you make up your name?
I wish I could say that I did, but it's my name.
Wilshire Boulevard. It's so perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles today. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. See you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.